responsabilidade do design respeitar o seu papel e alargar a sua intervenção social. Um dos grandes papéis que o designer deve ter na sociedade, na economia, nas empresas, nas instituições, é ser o pivô do desenho de soluções para os mais diversos problemas. O design pode ser a ponte entre várias áreas, pela sua capacidade de comunicação e compreensão, e os designers podem atuar em outras áreas do conhecimento, como antropologia, psicologia, línguas, engenharia e economia.
Não é por acaso que as iniciativas de design colaborativo são sempre mais ricas quanto maior a diversidade de competências, experiência e know-how dos participantes.
Em que áreas pode e deve o designer trabalhar? Todas. Com grande poder costuma vir grande responsabilidade. E esse papel e participação, pelo impacto que podem ter na sociedade, são de uma enorme responsabilidade.
O papel social do design já esteve associado à qualidade da comunicação visual, à facilitação de informações de utilidade pública, comunicação visual de movimentos sociais e politicamente engajados e até conscientização de clientes sobre o impacto social dos trabalhos de design gráfico. Os profissionais do design gráfico devem preocupar-se não só com a maneira de comunicar, mas também com o conteúdo de suas comunicações e com a responsabilidade social perante a profissão.
Faz parte do papel do designer gráfico colaborar com as empresas de forma a contribuir com o desenvolvimento econômico local e melhorar a comunicação entre empresa, produto e usuário. Além disso, projetos e pesquisas relacionadas ao design gráfico que lidam com o repertório visual e expressões culturais local também têm um importante aspecto do papel social do designer gráfico, uma vez que dentre as atividades do design também está a elaboração de identidade através da manifestação visual de elementos da cultura local.
Os estudantes de hoje têm uma maior consciência e preocupação do impacto ambiental do projeto desenvolvido, passando pelos processos de produção até o eventual descarte ou desuso.
Os pictogramas foram desenvolvidos na tentativa de criar uma linguagem universal e só depois pensou em sua padronização mundial. Eles derivam da criação de sinais e símbolos, como os hieróglifos e ideogramas, e têm a capacidade de sintetizar até frases inteiras, como "não fume", em um espaço reduzido, de maneira concisa e de rápido entendimento. Apesar do caráter democratizante no entendimento da mensagem, já que não é preciso ler no idioma local, é recomendável usar, junto ao pictograma, a frase verbal a qual ele se refere, pois não há uma real universalização. Os pictogramas são aprendidos também pela repetição da sua exposição em um determinado contexto. O sistema pictográfico é especialmente benéfico em espaços multiculturais, com fluxos heterogêneos linguisticamente, como aeroportos e terminais de transportes, pois se mostram mais eficientes que a palavra escrita, criando um atalho de comunicação não verbal, com imagens de alto valor icônico, que além de auxiliar na memorização de informação e facilitar o entendimento da mensagem, trazem sensação de maior segurança e confiança para o usuário.
Para a produção e análise dos projetos de design de sinalização, além dos elementos gráficos apresentados, é importante considerar o espaço e o uso em questão onde se apresentam. Projetos em aeroportos, plataformas de transporte multimodais, ferrovias e metrôs são muito relevantes para a sociedade. Nestes espaços de trânsito massivo, o wayfinding deve ser bem planejado e constantemente avaliado, para que os usuários de características múltiplas possam reunir ou adquirir as informações espaciais, organizando-as e atualizando-as.
Além disso, deve-se ter em conta as diferenças de cada infraestrutura de transporte. Um aeroporto, por exemplo, é uma estação única, que pode ter vários acessos, mas dificilmente se amplia pela cidade, como é o caso do sistema metroviário. Nesses locais, o passageiro precisa consultar determinados tipos de informação com mais detalhamento, porém sem afetar o fluxo.
A forma como os acessos são nomeados também interfere no direcionamento rápido e preciso dos passageiros.
O design afeta ou não a sociedade?
Afinal, ele nasceu para criar e transmitir mensagens aos indivíduos, consumidores, eleitores, espectadores ou às pessoas que o profissional queira atingir.
O design deveria se restringir aos interesses de seus contratantes ou expandir sua capacidade comunicativa à sociedade como um todo?
Caberia ao designer fazer as pessoas refletirem sobre consumismo e sustentabilidade? Ou engajar-se em programas sobre prevenção ao crime, saúde pública, planejamento familiar, política ou direitos humanos? O atual sistema de produção se caracteriza por um ritmo acelerado, que se utiliza de recursos naturais renováveis e não renováveis.
O dilema do design no contexto atual é conciliar as questões ambientais com o modelo econômico. Aumento de consumo gera maiores tributos, maior capacidade de intervenção estatal, maior lucratividade organizacional e manutenção das taxas de geração de ocupação e renda. Dentre essas alternativas, a abordagem de ecodesign apresenta-se como uma ferramenta valiosa, uma vez que busca minimizar os impactos ambientais ao longo de todo o ciclo de vida do produto,
desde sua concepção até o seu descarte. Portanto, design social não se restringe a objetos e suas formas, mas se estende a eventos, processos e projetos de longa duração.
O design social não só não deve ficar restrito aos âmbitos dos designs de objetos, mas é essencial que seja um trabalho multidisciplinar.
O design social não só não deve ficar restrito ao âmbito dos designers de objetos, mas é essencial que seja um trabalho multidisciplinar. Os desafios sociais concretos que temos que enfrentar exigem diferentes capacidades profissionais e intelectuais.
Essas capacidades devem encontrar um ambiente onde possam receber informações, dialogar, colaborar e encontrar soluções que harmonizem as diferentes perspectivas em um único serviço coerente.
A inovação social valoriza o mesmo conceito básico de uma transformação significativa em produtos ou processos, mas estendendo essa transformação para o campo das relações e ações sociais.
Inovações sociais pontuais podem ser o princípio de transformações sociais e mesmo fonte de novos modelos de desenvolvimento econômico, modificando a percepção do papel das empresas, governos, organizações e indivíduos na construção da nossa sociedade.
São necessidades sociais dos mais diversos tipos, como nos campos das condições de trabalho, lazer, educação, meio ambiente, segurança, saúde, patrimônio histórico, turismo, ocupação e mobilidade urbana.
Entende-se por design social a abordagem de um projeto de design que inicia pela identificação de uma necessidade dos atores impactados e que visa solucionar um problema que atinge a comunidade enfocada.
Um projeto de design social não tem necessariamente uma motivação ou finalidade econômica, parte de requisitos de caráter social e não técnicos ou mercadológicos, e deve envolver a comunidade e os atores impactados durante o processo criativo, trabalhando de maneira colaborativa. Por fim, conforme ilustrado, pode envolver uma equipe multidisciplinar no objeto de gerar resultados melhores, embasados por profissionais de diferentes áreas de atuação.
Há quem defenda que uma prática econômica social e ambientalmente responsável por parte do designer não é suficiente para que o projeto seja definido como design social. Um argumento para isso está na defesa de que é necessário que os atores que sofrem com problemas e contextos analisados estejam envolvidos no processo e sejam parte da criação e das decisões, de forma a se apropriarem da solução desenvolvida. Empreendedores têm buscado cada vez mais essa especialidade do design, tanto para criar um braço social para suas marcas, quanto para realmente agregar valor à sua cadeia produtiva.
O design social pode ser entendido como uma ferramenta de inovação capaz de transformar, de modo criativo e eficaz, necessidades e desejos humanos em produtos e sistemas adequados não somente do ponto de vista econômico. O modelo considera também o aspecto social, cultural, ecológico e sustentável das criações. Portanto, muito mais do que um projeto, o design social é uma forma de tornar o mundo mais inclusivo. Para ampliar ainda mais a conversa e aumentar a conscientização do público em torno do aumento de produtos e serviços acessíveis projetados na última década, são organizadas, anualmente, diversas exposições inovadoras, onde demonstram como o design social pode fornecer acesso sem precedentes a um mundo que agora inclui mais de 1 bilhão de pessoas com deficiência. Além disso, também enfatiza a crescente participação desse grupo no processo de criação do design e dá voz a uma diversidade maior de pessoas, o que resulta em soluções que funcionam melhor para todos. Inspirados nessa proposta, Reunimos aqui vários projetos nos quais o design social foi aplicado com o objetivo de tornar o mundo mais inclusivo e derrubar barreiras e preconceitos. Confira a lista.
Centro de Pedagogia Urbana, CUP. O CUP colabora com professores, alunos, especialistas em políticas e defensores da comunidade, juntamente com artistas e designers, para comunicar visualmente processos urbanos complexos e decisões políticas. Eles usam uma variedade de abordagens de design para explicar políticas difíceis de entender para os menos atendidos que geralmente são mais afetados por elas.
Every city is shaped by invisible networks of buried infrastructure, impenetrable public policies, and decision-making processes that shape everything around us, from where a street vendor can park a cart, to how tall a building can be, to what happens when a young person gets arrested. True democracy can only happen when people understand the decisions that shape their lives and have a say in how it works. People most often excluded from these decisions, people of color, low-income families, immigrants, and youth, are often most impacted by them. By using the power of design and art to collaborate with the people most affected by these decisions, we wanted to demystify how the city works so that more people get a chance to make their voices heard.
When CUP first started, it was kind of a loose group of people that were really interested in the city and how it works.
The notion always was to put yourself in the place of the public. And so certainly you started out not knowing anything about a building code or anything about the Environmental Control Board. But the basic premise was, if we're going to hold our democracy accountable to its promises, these things that can't be decided alone have to be decided as groups.
There's no one who goes to work every day and says, okay, this law was just passed yesterday, here's how we're going to communicate it to the public now. So for us, we really try to focus on the places where people are really saying, hey, this thing is happening because we don't understand it, help us to understand it, help us to have a tool to communicate it. I think where CUP really started to become CUP was when the projects about figuring out how the city worked started to become useful to people that could actually use that information and advocate for themselves in different ways.
If we want to have some kind of an impact, we need to learn to translate what other people are telling us into our own language. Got arrested, now what? It's a comic book designed for young people going through the juvenile justice system.
Youth get arrested and they're really terrified and they have no idea what's happening to them. There are a handful of things they could do to help their situation out, and no one's going to tell them that. And so the idea of this guide is that it really breaks things down for them in the moment that they really need it.
Today, the Department of Probation in New York City actually distributes a copy of it to every young person coming into the system.
Sewer in a Suitcase comes from a youth education project that we did as a kind of workshop tool. We produce these to be used by community organizations, environmental organizations, to demonstrate what happens when it rains a lot in the city. This glitter here stands for pollution. New York City has what's called a combined sewer system, which means that water from apartment buildings joins up underground with water that comes in through the storm drains. Usually that water gets treated at a wastewater treatment plant. When it rains too much, that system gets overloaded and a lot of the untreated water spills out directly into New York City's waterways.
We designed Vendor Power for Street Vendor Project, a membership organization of New York City street vendors who are often recent immigrants and who don't spend a lot of time reading policy. They were really interested in having a tool that was primarily visual, but they wanted it to look official enough that they could actually show it to a police officer. Individual tickets in New York can cost as much as $1,000. These fines are for things like being located in the wrong place, or being too close to a building, or too close to an exit. Putting something into vendors' hands that lets them go about their business and not get in trouble for it has a huge impact.
We take these fundamental questions about how the city works and bring together a group of public high school students with CUP and a teaching artist, and we go out into the city to investigate answers to that question.
It's not like we have the answers and then we provide them to the students. We investigate together.
We start with a huge question, which was, who decides where supermarkets go?
Are there enough supermarkets in the Bronx? Why is that? How can things be different? What role can we have in the community? So we came up with this idea of having a comic/panel booklet so it can flip pages and can learn about the issue.
When we think about there's no food, there's no health. So making this project makes me think that these people in those little buildings are not living as they should.
So we could go with the community board and probably with our congressman, ask for more supermarkets.
When we work with youth, we're really engaging their kind of natural cynicism about things, and I think that's often seen as a negative aspect of teenagers. But for us, that's where critical thinking comes from.
The goal of CUP's youth program has always been the understandability of the world, and architecture and design played the role of catalyzing that process.
The main goal is to increase civic participation, but I think the skill of being able to break down information in a visual way is something they definitely come away with.
Literal Flight. O empreendedor social filipino Ilac Dias desenvolveu uma solução brilhante, trocadilho intencional, para a iluminação para milhões de pessoas em todo o mundo que vivem em casas sem acesso à luz do dia. A ideia não é apenas inovadora, mas também a abordagem que ele adotou para expandir a ideia.
Hundreds of millions of people live in informal settlements worldwide. Because buildings in these areas are so closely crowded together, natural light often has no way of entering. For many people, paying expensive electricity bills simply isn't an option, and these households often resort to kerosene candles or improvised wiring for light, risking health and safety. We wondered if there was a better way to bring light to these places when there was none. My name is Ilac Diaz. I'm the Executive Director of My Shelter Foundation. This is based in the Philippines, and it does everything how to reinvent green architecture and design and bring it to the grassroots. We had one of the worst storms in history in the Philippines, and 80% of my city went underwater. In 6 hours, we had a month of monsoon rain. We found out from the World Bank that 2,700 classrooms were destroyed. We were really looking for something people could do now. It wasn't a matter of just waiting for aid. The thing that was clogging up the drainage at that time was plastic bags and plastic bottles. And so what we did really was use the adobe system of Nadhir Khalili, liquefy it, put it in bottles, and then stack it up. For infrastructure, we would fill it with soil. But for the windows, since we could not afford flat glass, we would put bottles of water and then stack it up together. In the morning, we would see the sunrise and it would just let light through the bottles. And so this was the start of really using it as a window. And then later on, we started testing it on the roofs. We talked to other students at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and then we came across Alfredo Moser's work, which he also put a plastic bottle on the roof. The light goes through the bottle and then through the water. And by bending light, you don't have to have a large aperture, but at the same time, you get a magnificent amount of light coming in and bending and hitting the walls. It, on an average, reduces 40% of your electricity bills. Once you light up a house, that house will never go back into darkness again. The people that are building our solar bulbs are people in the dump sites. So instead of just gathering and selling the scraps, they put aside plastic bottles, they build the solar bottles, and then they sell it for installations. For big orders, we actually do it in jail cells. With the same amount of profit, we ask them to build the solar bulbs. People that are marginalized are actually the people that are our main factories in making this possible. Madilim ba dati?
Madilim.
So, ganyan yung bahay na yun.
Ngayon, maliwanag na po.
Our biggest partner is Colombia, and they've spread it to Peru, to Argentina, Mexico, Kenya, Mumbai, Jakarta, Vietnam. When they suddenly see that they can do something and they want to do something, and it's all in a simple design that can be done not by large trucks and large money, but by human hands and a pair of snips, then it changes the whole way that we can attack problems of the future. The purest form of charity is to make yourself obsolete. And that is the vein of this movement.
MAS Design Group. Fundado na Harvard School de Design por Michael Murphy e Alan Hicks, o MAS é um dos ótimos exemplos de arquitetos aplicando suas habilidades de uma maneira que muda vidas. O Hospital Butaro em Ruanda foi uma colaboração entre a MAS Design e a Parceiros na Saúde, fundada por Paul Farmer. A solução de design é uma combinação impressionante de inovação funcional, belo uso de formas e materiais e abordagens inteligentes para a construção. O resultado final é um hospital que atende a padrões mais altos do que muitos hospitais de custo muito mais alto.
What looks like a beautiful environment of rolling hills and lakes, really to Rwandans is a hard to access topography where healthcare is scarce.
This is a district of over 400,000 souls, and in 2003, 2004, there was not a single doctor, much less a district hospital.
Paul Farmer is the founder of Partners in Health, a visionary nonprofit organization that's really changed the landscape of healthcare. I was in my first semester of my first year of graduate school, and when I went and saw him speak, he was talking about healthcare, but he was talking really about buildings, building hospitals, building clinics, building schools. I really wanted to understand how I could get involved and who the architects he was working with. Of course, he said, architects, why would I ever use an architect? I just draw the hospitals myself. Sometime in November, I got a call from Paul's assistant. They said, look, we need to build this new hospital. Would you be interested in helping? I said, well, I have no idea how to build a hospital, but we can figure it out.
We were not naive to the fact that we were students. We'd never built a hospital before. But what we found was the way things were being done without architects was so problematic that we thought we could bring something to the table to help.
Suddenly we had a hospital to design, and 8 months later I was living in Rwanda full-time. This kind of deep immersion I realized was something that was missing from the architectural profession.
This is saying, let's take our mindset as a designer and work with partners and really be the kind of translator of a bunch of different expertises. And this is the way we can use architecture to help be a part of the solution. Someone showed us where an outbreak of tuberculosis had occurred. All these people had come to a clinic and gotten sick there. We said, well, why is that? And they said, well, it's because they're in these crowded hallways where there's no ventilation. And we said, well, so why have hallways?
If the building is designed in such a way to increase airflow and reduce infection, it's actually performing to improve health.
Step number one, let's design a hospital with no hallways. Step number two, we created these rooms that are a single loaded building so that you have cross ventilation. Initially, we had to excavate the hillside. And so we said, well, what if we do this with the community? And instead of one bulldozer, we have 1,000 people.
If you change the way that we build to have impact along the way, then the building isn't just a performance of improving health, it's the building process which can also improve a community's health. We had an idea of what we thought a volcanic rock wall could look like.
So we took previously unskilled people and kind of worked together to figure out what are the best ways to communicate with one another to get the right end result.
By the time they got to the end, you can actually see the difference in the quality of the craft. Some of the workers actually asked us if they could go back and correct the work that they had done in the beginning, which we refused because we thought it was pretty good to begin with.
Since it's opened, patients are flocking in from even Uganda. The most drastic drop in infant mortality in one region that they've seen anywhere in the world. This is the model of Jirubuntu School. Primarily what we wanted to show in this model was how it's touching the landscape, and in particular, how we're thinking about dividing up the kind of unique hillsides of Rwanda.
As we were driving around the kind of Rwandan countryside, which is very mountainous, You could see the way people walk up and down the hills on switchbacks. We thought we'd take advantage of that typology to kind of create these unique terrace play spaces, very Rwandan in many ways, but hadn't really been deployed in this way.
This was kind of an emerging neighborhood in Kigali, and in the 3 years that we've been working on it, there's been an incredible amount of development around the site itself, and you can see new middle-class homes going up. I feel like it's been part of this change in the capital itself, and it'll fit nicely and weave well into this community.
As we said, design isn't neutral, it's either helping or hurting, and where do you want to be on that kind of spectrum of things?
We have a responsibility to the public, and we can use it as a lever to add value and insist upon quality and make sure that the poor, for example, or the marginalized, our public, gets the best that we can provide as designers.
RIWAC. Este foi projeto muito inspirador para todos. RIWAC é grupo de arquitetos que trabalha na Palestina para salvar e reformar o que resta dos prédios históricos do país. Este vídeo não apenas mostra a dedicação da equipe, mas também oferece uma janela para país e pessoas totalmente diferentes das representações que vemos convencionalmente na mídia.
It all started with my childhood. Now I look back at things. I grew up in Jordan, so my father was always talking about his house in Jaffa. And as a child, I had to sort of construct Palestine, build images of whatever my father told me as a kid. My father always talked about the 420 villages that the Israelis destroyed, and that number was magic for me. When I came to the first time in my life to Palestine, I was intrigued that the number of villages were 420 villages that exist now in West Bank and Gaza. So I have a mission of protecting the remaining 50% of what has been destroyed.
The restoration of buildings has always been a dream of RIWAC. Because when RIWAC started, we didn't know anything. Not just we didn't know how many buildings there were in Palestine, we also didn't know how to restore them because the building knowledge was lost. So the first 10 years of RIWAC's life were practically experimentation and documentation. But in 2001, when the Intifada started, unemployment rates were very high in Palestine. For us, building restoration is a quintessential job creation project.
Money we spend on a building, 90% of it goes really to the community. They get a space, a nice space. They benefit, they work in it, and they put money in their pockets.
وكيف اندليت على الشغل مع رواق؟
في أبو محمد بكى المقاول الأول فكان صديق والدي. اشتغلت مع والدي يومين فعجبوا الشغل معه واشتغلت كملت معه. مهم بالفعل مهم إنه في أشياء قديمة تتجدد تراثنا بضل.
We use environmental material, we use organic material, we use locally produced material. We don't import new material to make Palestine more beautiful.
After working on single buildings and individual buildings, 60 or 70 projects like this, we discovered it's not enough. So in order to save more buildings and have a larger impact, it was, okay, we need to work on a larger scale. We need to save towns as a whole. Our dream is to have these centers alive again.
We came to this village and we found a lot of intact historic fabric, these beautiful historic facades. So we started working on that to make sure that they're not deteriorating. We also introduced infrastructure. electricity, water pipes. And one of the projects we did is also this building. We renovated that together with the municipality, and the municipality decided to rent it out to be used as a restaurant. And so that encouraged other people also to start opening maybe like a falafel shop, a small cafe. So business owners started thinking about also investing in the historic center. This open space, it's used for different activities. Like in the summer, there's this cultural heritage festival. You come for a week and there are shops and kiosks and there's music and it's really beautiful.
I remember many times when we go and they say like, what you are doing? You are crazy. These are dead things, you cannot make them alive. And those same people, I remember them in the inauguration, almost crying. And they say, we got it wrong.
زينوا الحرق تغيرت علينا وأنورت وصلحوا إشي كثير يعني وعمروها حوالينا واللي بيجي يعني مبسوط في حارتنا إنه شو صار فيها وصار عمارة صار إنه فيها أكثر يعني ما.
We don't want to neither gentrify these historic centers nor make them museums. We want the people who live there to help them in such a way that they can make use, their children can make use of the historic centers.
Palestine doesn't have any petrol. Palestine only has its heritage. So our heritage is our petrol. It's where our investment should be, and it's where our money will come from in the future. And it's not just for the economics of tourism coming. With the urban expansion happening now, we're losing public spaces. We're losing spaces that are accessible to everyone to go to.
We need a public space. We need a public space because this is the place for community to meet and to make a dialogue and to intervene in their future. Colonization does not take place in territory. It takes place here. If you are free here, nobody can colonize you. And because we are architects, we claim also that space is essential to have this freedom in mind. Space could be a medium and could be a tool to change things.
Jeanne Van Eyssouij. Jeanne Van Eyssouij se descreve como uma artista ao invés de uma designer, mas ela usa as ferramentas do design para construir coalizões dentro das comunidades para criar espaços públicos animados e diversificados. O vídeo mostra a sua notável capacidade de se conectar a uma comunidade, dando-lhes maneiras de participar na concepção de soluções para si mesmos.
I always describe my profession as that I'm an artist working in public space. When I first came here, we were looking at the area and I thought, I don't want to do a temporary project here. I really want to create a more permanent project around housing. I think at this moment in time, housing in general is one of the battlefields of our time. I mean, it's really a battlefield, the right to a decent living. Enfield has been undergoing a major regeneration scheme over the last 10 years. The idea was to demolish most of the classical two-up, two-downs, the terrace houses as they're called, and to replace them by new build and also demolish the existing buildings in order to create a new street. What happened like 2 years ago through the economic crisis, the housing market renewal stopped, it failed, so the money ran out. So the whole scheme of all the new build and all of the delivery of the promised regeneration is not going to happen.
It's a story of corporate abuse assisted by local political corruption. Basically what you have is a football club here founded in 1892. You get people from all over the planet coming to see them. That means they need land, and strategically they've destabilised this area.
So my gran bought the house in 1920, and then when my nan died, the house came to my mum, and now it's come to me.
Year by year, the area has just literally died bit by bit. Hopefully it will become an area where people will want to come, and it will grow again. And this is partly what the bakery means to me.
You are in what people know as the former Mitchell's Bakery. What we have been doing is that we set up a land trust At the moment the land trust will own the bakery and the bakery building and first the 2 adjacent houses, and then later it will also go and look for other properties in the area.
The way things work in terms of building around here is you get kicked out of your home, and then if you're lucky enough to have the money, you can move back to a house that's been designed by somebody for a profit. Here at the bakery, we literally, every single person sat around and designed what's happening.
The plan for the 2 houses and the bakery together is that the bakery will have the shop, then it will have the bakery kitchen, it will have a community space for training but also for communal gathering. On top of it, it will have a flat for young people, then also just a more smaller flat for a young adult, and then there will be a family home. So these are different typologies of which the community thought that would be needed in the area. Part of the project is also what we call home baked, and that is a community bakery which will start not only baking bread in the community but also has a shop where you can buy affordable food.
Out the front is the main shop area, which we're going to have seating, and then back here we're going to be having fresh bread made every single day, fresh sandwiches, fresh pastries and things like that.
My work has been about trying to find ways in which people can reconnect to their daily environment. It's of crucial importance for people to have the possibility to reimagine the place where they are, to see themselves as part of the image created about their future. You feel that a lot of people in our contemporary society feel left out. They no longer think or even can imagine the fact that they can have a say in the future development of their area. And I think that's not true. I think it is still possible to take matters in your own hand and to change the direction of your own future. What is very important is that the physical development of that area is not just building a set of new houses, but it's actually also building social relationships. So here we say brick by brick, loaf by loaf we build ourselves. The right to live well is something you can still demand.
Só por meio da sua empatia é possível entender as necessidades e procurar da melhor maneira responder de forma eficaz aos desafios de um projeto, seja ele qual for. Desta forma, não é possível falar de design sem a propriedade da pesquisa em profundidade, sem a absoluta percepção do contexto, sem a fundamentalização conceitual, mas, sobretudo, sem o profundo conhecimento do usuário. É este o grande objetivo do design. Se estes pressupostos estiverem presentes no desenvolvimento, as qualidades se materializarão no projeto.